Next, we have a brief discussion and with Dr. Dong Wang from China. Yeah, just a small 10-12 minute conversation with you on, China is a very important country, not only for India, but China is today a big player globally. So, and you are a very important man in China, especially when it comes to international relations.
Well,
let me ask you a first question. I'm going to ask a brief question and just give me a brief answer so that we can cover as much ground as we can. But just to start with this, in China, one gets the impression that until recently you had a certain view in terms of China's energy mix. But now one gets the impression that China probably is going to go slow on nuclear power. Is there a rethink? And if yes, why?
You mean in energy?
Nuclear. Yeah, energy. Yeah, no nuclear weapons,
Okay.
Nuclear energy.
All right. Thank you, Narendra. Thank you for the very nice. I'm very much flattered. So I'm trying to be, pretending to be very important here. I think yesterday in my presentation, I actually listed some of the statistics. I think the Chinese plan or strategies to really also to utilize a lot of the nuclear energy and trying to build more, I think, nuclear reactors. I think that's how I think in the overall wanted to reduce the reliance on the fossil fuels and then in renewable energy. I think that's the effort Chinese government has been putting into. Generally speaking, I think that has been the way to go, and in the decades to come, I think there will be, I think, certainly more reactors to be built. So I'm not sure where, whether or not we can arrive at this conclusion, saying that the pace has been slowed down in building more nuclear power in reactors in China.
But I have seen reports that claim that there is a kind of resistance on the ground in China when it comes to nuclear power station. People are saying nuclear power plant is fine as long as you are not building that in my backyard. That's all over the world, more or less. But even in China, that there are protests and people have actually been coming out in the street and saying, look, we won't let you build nuclear power plant. Any truth in such reports?
There's been some reported, I think, episodes, but not exactly in the nuclear, I think, arena. I actually recently just paid a visit to one of the largest nuclear power plants in Zhejiang province, my home province, and that's just, you get the impression, you will be impressed about how advanced that technology and everything they're being built out there. So I think the public awareness partly, of course, comes from what happened not exactly in China, but around us. For instance, in Japan. So I think what happened in Japan a few years ago, this nuclear disaster, of course, I think make the public, not only in China, but mostly in Japan and elsewhere, in many other countries, also to be concerned about the nuclear safety. I think one thing that Chinese government has been also putting a lot of emphasis nowadays is nuclear safety. And we are using, I think, the sort of most advanced technology to build the safest nuclear power plants, facilities. So I think the government will, of course, understand, also aware of the public concern, and therefore there is a sort of interaction, communication that between the government and the public, and therefore as a consequence, I think what happened is that in the policy-wise, the government is say, okay, we are still, the goal is to build more nuclear reactor. That is because of the needs to reduce reliance on fossil fuel and building more renewable energy sources. but we'll do it in a very sort of safe, robust way. And I think that's a good thing.
When you look at BRI, this China's grand plan or the China's Marshall Plan, depends how you want to call it, energy is a very important component. For instance, when you look at BRI in some of the key countries that China has gone into, energy is a very important component. For instance, Pakistan. When you look at China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, there almost 70% of the projects are, energy projects, include power plants and so many other things. Tell us, like in India, we don't understand BRI. We don't understand, why, it is not something under the UN, it's China's own initiative. What exactly is the core motive? Is the core motive of BRI is basically to generate business for Chinese state-owned companies because you have built now your infrastructure, you are looking for business opportunities overseas, and this is the best way forward because you also have capital. So under BRI, you extend the capital first, and then in turn that creates basically contracts and jobs for Chinese state-owned company, and many of them are very large companies, Or the objective is basically to this, plus also to use BRI as a kind of tool to promote China's strategic interests so that China over a period of time can replace the United States. Any truth in it?
Okay. I think this is actually a lot of talk about whether or not, BRI, there's any strategic design behind that or not. From what I see, my personal view is that the essence or the key word of BRI really is just one key word, which is connectivity. To enhance the connectivity between China and the outside world. And if we look at China's sort of experiences or success stories, so to speak, one of the most important experiences we have joined from last 4 decades of development, reform, and opening up is really the build-up of infrastructure. So there is a saying in China, like if you want to get rich, you have to build a road first. And I think there's economic sort of laws behind that because you have to have infrastructure as a basis and then, create the basis for sustainable and robust economic growth. And this is also, I think, the thing that China wanted to share with many other developing countries, mostly along the Belt and Road Initiative. And of course, there's no denying that BRI it's not just giving loans, or assistance out. It's also about win-win, like business cooperation. So which means that not only that the companies or many other partners who come in those projects, and of course we want to make it profitable. So, but the most important thing I think most important thing I want to emphasize is that BRI is not for instance, Chinese project, or, it's China put up this proposal, but this is an open one, it's inclusive, everyone can join in. It doesn't say, you have to sign up or you have to meet certain criteria like IMF or World Bank loans criteria, then you get the loans from IMF. There's no such thing. It's just I think about win-win business cooperation. So I also last thing I want to in response to your question here is that I think China is in we have no stomach of pursuing any hegemony or whatsoever. No offense to Ray, Mr. Raymond, Vickery here, our dear American colleagues here. I think the world is fed up with one American hegemony. So we are not certainly wanted to stomach to pursue. So it's more about cooperation.
Yeah. So you said world is fed up, okay, or China is fed up.
Of the world, I think, is fed up with American. We see a lot of complaint about U.S. government already throughout the 2 days.
Now, American sanctions against Iran. How do you see this sanction an opportunity for China? Americans moving out, Europeans moving out, China moving in with big capital, with big projects in Iran. And are we going to see China all over Iran in coming 5 years thanks to President Trump?
Well, first for sanction on Iran, I think this is one issue. So I think Ray, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think this is also a policy issue that gets heatedly debated in the United States even. So the Trump administration is pursuing that policy, but it's also, I think, strongly opposed by at least, I think, people from Democratic side. So, and also, if you look at international community, there are a lot of criticism about the Trump administration decision to get out of the sort of scrap this Iran nuclear deal. That's one thing. And the second thing is that, yes, we, import, China import a lot of oil from the Middle East, including some from Iran. This also holds true for many other countries, including India, Japan. So I think the Chinese position would be, we will try to work together with the international community and to the best way possible way that try to say whether or not we can sort of, so to speak, save the Iran nuclear deal. But if we fail, whether or not what the alternative ways to try to also secure and pursue peace in that regard. And in terms of a sanction, I think our position is that we'll definitely stand by whatever things that the consensus of the international community. For instance, if there's any sanction imposed by UN Security Council, of course we'll abide by that. But that doesn't mean that no one's supposed to do any business with Iran, because this is not the consensus.
So for China, it's business as usual?
No, I'm not saying business as usual. We will do what is perceived as legitimate, right? Considered as legitimate, those things. But we know that everyone is still doing business with Iran, and that's also a fact. It's just that doesn't mean that United States wants to, the Trump administration wants to impose this sanction on Iran. It means everyone has cut off all their ties with Iran. I'm not sure whether that is how, how the international consensus is. And at least that is something very controversial, I would say.
I'll just interrupt you to ask a couple of other questions before I let you go. I'm just trying to understand. Look at China. China is a great civilization. China and India are among the two oldest civilizations in the world, and unless India and China join forces, we'll not be able to transform Asia, build a new Asia. You can build a new China, we can build a new India, and Prime Minister Abe can build a new Japan, but we'll not be able to build Asia together. And when you look at the challenges, whether it's poverty or jobs or economic development, I think the message is clear that all these countries need to work together. But just look around. You have problems with Japan. You have problems with Korea, South Korea. You have problems with India. You have problems with Vietnam. And you have problem in South China, therefore with number of other countries, including Australia. You have problems which are not very visible, but even with countries in the ASEAN region, they say that you are not letting ASEAN function. And there are some subtle problems even with Russia, though on the surface looks everything very hunky-dory. Am I right? Or you think that I don't understand China?
Well, thanks for very provocative questions from you, Narendra. I think first of all, my response would be, we live in, this is reality, we live in an imperfect world, right? So no one says, even just take our personal relations, for instance, it doesn't mean that everyone around me or in my company, my neighborhood is my good friend. They are, it's very natural in our everyday life, in international relations, we would have some differences. So the important thing is how we are going to deal with those differences. I think the Chinese position is always is that let's try to work together, find, in a peaceful manner, and through negotiation, diplomatic means, instead of, using force or threat to use force. So I wouldn't be particularly bothered by the fact that, yes, we have certain differences with certain of our, friends, partners. Even I think between or amongst the most close friends, like even between husband, wife, doesn't mean always we come along on every, each and every single issue. So the most important thing, how we are going to deal with that. So I think for us is that always the positive sum approach is the most important way to go. So if we sort of, take that kind of approach and look at what China is trying to propose. You mentioned, the thing, for instance, China, Japan. Yes, we put aside, decide to put shelf our differences, and now our leaders, our two countries, have decided, we've agreed that we should sort of move on, and the relations are warming up, and so is also so does China, South Korea relations, and also for ASEAN as well. We also working very closely with ASEAN, trying to come up with a code of conduct in South China Sea. Therefore, so what I'm trying to say is that it's not a surprise that we will have difference between us and our partners, but the most important thing, how we are going to deal with that through a peaceful manner and negotiation.
Very good. You should have been in diplomacy, Prof. Okay.
Thank you.
But just the last question, I can't let you go without asking a question. Tell us one thing. When it comes to your external relations, it seems that you have a very special place in your heart for a country called Islamic Republic of Pakistan. There's a full name of Pakistan, by the way, and even if Pakistani government has to protect a terrorist, China go along with it, say, yeah, this guy is not a terrorist, What exactly, why don't you look at the reality, or you think that, Pakistan is like a very important strategic asset for you. So therefore, whatever they do, you can actually afford to ignore it. So tell us, what is it that kind of binds you with Pakistan so blindly? You are in New Delhi, so I have to ask you this question.
Sure, thank you. Now I understand why you call it hot seat. So, well, we value our relations with Pakistan, but we also value very much our relations with India. And our position is that we very much want India, and we know that between India and Pakistan you have certain disputes, but our attitude, our position is always want to encourage both to pursue a constructive relationship. And this is what I think we've been telling Pakistani as well, friends as well. And this is also, I think I don't think it is fair to say that China is taking the side of Pakistan, sort of ban against India. That's not really, what is happening now. And of course, I understand the concern from the Indian friends saying, oh, whether or not this is what is happening. But from what I see, that's really not the case. And for instance, our ambassador here, we've been also putting up some proposals, very concrete proposals, just not a while ago, to increase or encourage to maybe offer to help in a way, at least as a goodwill, wanted to encourage, I think, India and Pakistan really to work together.
We don't need help.
Yeah, I understand, but as a friends,
Pakistan is a neighbor.
Yeah, as a goodwill, we will say whatever in our capacity, we'll be willing to help. But if you say you don't need that, we also, we understand that. But I think what we are trying to say that what we want to see is really a good, constructive India-Pakistani relationship, and also this triangular.
Yeah, just interrupting you because since the time is limited, just the last question is the very last, is that one observes, and I don't claim to be an expert in China, but one observes that last 20 years we saw many reforms in China. In the sense there was more democratization of the Chinese power structure, including the Communist Party of China, like the people were elected for a fixed term and there was more democracy. That's the impression we had. Now one observes that things have been put on the reverse gear in the sense that that has been stopped, and we are not going to see much democracy within the Communist Party of China, and therefore in China, the country. That's the impression I was gathering, that China as a whole is on the reverse gear. And if that is really the case, the consequences of that, A, for China's future, and B, for Asia.
Well, I really wanted to, well, thanks for the question, and I wanted to also take the opportunity to make a little bit of clarification here, at least. One is that if we look at the past 40 years since China started its opening up and reform in 1978, it's already 40 years. And in these 40 years of experience, I think one of the, actually two key words of the Chinese from everyday conversation to policy discussion, the terms that got the biggest legitimacy, overwhelming support among the public and elites, consensus, which is reform, and second is open up. And what the Chinese government now is trying to do, or telling the public, or this sort of really emergent consensus, renewed consensus or commitment, is to further pursue even higher level of opening up and reform. So what we see there is clearly a renewed commitment. It's crystal clear. We are fully committed to reform and further opening up, and no one is talking about sort of returning back. That's not, I think, the people want. That's not the government is leading the nation, the party leading the nation too. So I just want to assure every friend here in this room and here in India that I think China is very much, I think, and last thing I want to say, that one thing that we learn also from the 40 years of experience of reform and opening up is that once we integrate fully, closely with the globalized world, this is how we achieved, prosperity. And the only way going forward is to further integrate ourselves with the globalized world, and we are willing, we are fully committed to that.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.